So my passion is to learn about other people's passions, because when someone has a chance to talk about what they're most passionate about, everything about their being becomes brighter, it becomes more real, it becomes more them. And I think that authenticity and that feeling alive and connected and present in the world is a thing I want to surround myself with all of the time. On today's episode, I am chatting with the inspirational Debbie Pope. If you want to learn more about Debbie, please go to janesplace.com, where you can learn more about her and her favorite comfort food. So Debbie, we've known each other for a few years, and we met when I was the CEO of Lily's and you were just stepping into the YWCA CEO role. And one of the things that from the very beginning that just inspired me around you was your passion for equality and for women and for racial justice. And there's just so many things. But the passion, not just the topic, but how you show up in the world was just all about passion. And to me, every time I've been with you, I've just wanted to just kind of pull some of that in and take it. So today what I'd like to really talk about is what you get excited about, what you're passionate about. Obviously my observations are from being in my seat, not in yours. And so I'd just love to hear a little bit about today, what gets you most excited and why.
So for me, in my own work, I really love being out in nature. So there's a real calling for me. I like painting outdoors. I bring my backpack with my paints in it, and I'll go hike somewhere. I'll sit on a rock for hours and paint. And my mom taught me this beautiful thing when we were younger. It would be, a sunny Wisconsin day, and she'd say, okay, let's grab our bags of paints, and we're just going to go. And we're going to just find a spot. We didn't know where we were going. We're going to find a spot. We're going to sit down. We're going to paint whatever you see. And we really did that. We would be driving sometimes for 45 minutes, and then she'd say, what do you think about this spot? And we'd go take our blankets and sit in the middle of a cornfield and paint. And it was just like that simple. But what you see in those places was so incredible. And, my sister was always super meticulous. It was exactly what was there. Mine was like, what is that? I'm not sure, but, it's okay. And my mom was so great about being like, oh, I see this in your picture. And,
right.
My sisters, I see this. And so I think that has stayed with me of just being like that place of just like freedom and not being wound so tight and just taking some time to be really present. So...
Well, one of the things that I love about what you said is how we all can look at the same thing and see something totally different, which again, I think taking your painting analogy and back to just kind of building community and what people's expectations are when you're looking, kind of going into something, how do you, this kind of leads into this sort of having this common goal. How do you make sure that people understand that we're looking at the picture and we're all looking at the same picture, or or even if we see something different that we need to get to the same place? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, well, and I think that's the part where it has to be. You have to have enough voices creating the goal for people to see it, because and you know this too. I'm sure as a leader, sometimes I can have a great revelation of like, oh, I see it. This is what we need to do. And then you can't understand why other people can't quite get there.
Exactly.
Because you're like, don't you see it? And it's because they weren't part of that.
Right.
They weren't part of the creating it and seeing that space with you. And so I think that's a really important part of it. So it's kind of even agreeing on like, well, where are we going to paint? So it's like, well, then let's all sit here. And here's what we're going to, maybe you put some parameters around it where it's like, well, we want to paint something that is that particular landscape right there.
Right.
So I think it's also, you have to help kind of frame things, help people see, okay, here's the frame we're kind of looking through, and then let's pull it together. And also recognizing that, I may put a goal out there, and what I see in that goal is very different than what another organization may see. And that sometimes what may be different about it is maybe how we get there.
Right.
Which is how you start building the plan together. Because it's like, well, in my space, this is how we get there. They open up this whole new space to say, well, maybe we do have this space too that we look at. And I think it's especially important in equity work. I mean, I think it's messy. And there have been many times where I've stumbled, where I've thought, oh gosh, I didn't mean to offend someone. I didn't mean for someone to feel unheard.
Right.
It's kind of like that painting, right? Yeah. It's about that space where like it wasn't ill-intended, but it's like this was coming from my own experience, how I live and walk in this world, which is very different than how this other person did. And then you have to stop and acknowledge it and recognize like that is so important to have that as that part of that picture. And I missed it, right? So how do we go back and make sure that we get this right and that that's in there? But to your point, I think it's complicated because you kind of have to figure out what are the rules around getting to the goal.
Right, right.
What are we all agreeing? How are we going to get there? How are we going to follow? And then even sometimes I think you can start somewhere with a goal, and as you get into it, you quickly realize like, maybe that wasn't the right goal.
Right. Exactly.
And being able to be somewhat nimble
Right.
and be like, okay, so how do we shift it so that this is now kind of shifted and this is the goal we're going after. So
this is so funny how things happen, I think the way and the time they're supposed to happen. So I'm doing a town hall tomorrow for Rudy's, and one of the things a question that was asked in advance is sort of, what's your vision? Where are we going? And what's so interesting is I hadn't thought about it until this very moment, almost flipping it around to the organization and saying, where do you want to go? And it really kind of ties to what you were saying even earlier about us being a bread company and how important that is to feed people. How do I sort of get that emotional connection? It isn't just about where Jane wants to go. It's like the collective. And I've never, honestly, until this moment, hadn't really thought about how do I capture that collective feeling. And that's maybe how we get to where we're going versus people just saying, Jane, where do you want to go?
Right. And I think in times of uncertainty, it's very normal that people look to the leader and say, just tell me where to go.
Yes.
And I get that in a way. And then I know it can be frustrating because this happened when I first came to the Y. I had a lot of, it had been a while. They had since they had a leader in place, and so they were all just like, just tell us what to do.
Right.
And I'm like, I know you're going to be really frustrated with me,
Right.
but we have to go through this whole process. Like, we really got to get our strategic plan. We've got to get everybody engaged in that. That's going to be our roadmap. And until we have that, like, I'm not coming in to say, these are the 5 things that we're doing. I do understand for people that they need some short-term things, like here's some overall vision, and here's how we're going to get there together. But to your point, I think especially any collective of people, like everybody plays an important role in getting to the goal. So why would their voice not be a part of what that needs to look like?
That's so powerful. And the other thing you said earlier, which I think I've been missing, is that we're looking for such big lofty goals that we're forgetting that little milestones can actually help us get to that big lofty goal. And sometimes when you're only trying to go for that, you lose sight of, oh, we won this here, or this thing happened here, or how do I recognize this person here, because you're not at the big thing yet. Absolutely. And so, that's like the little milestones is also just a huge insight too.
Yeah, I think it's important. And I think a good example of this is when Roe v. Wade was overturned, there was a lot of like, oh my gosh, what do we do? What do we need to do? And some of it was like, how do we get organized around it? And then it was, I think, really important to say, what's that one area we're really going to focus on? Like, what's the first piece of legislation we're going to go after? And then it was, changing the Colorado Constitution, which meant getting a ballot measure. So the first step in that was like, well, we have to get this many petitions signed, and we have to get this many volunteers out there. So it helped in a way because we sort of had a step for each process. So it's like, oh, okay, now we got our, the most signatures ever on a petition signed. We did that. Now we need to get it voted, right? It has to be, the voters need to know about it and vote for it. So how do we do our get out the vote rallies? And so I think that was such a good lesson because I remember at the beginning that I was like, gosh, how are we going to tackle this? I mean, this is just so big.
Right.
And that was such an important, there were smarter organizers than me on the ground who had done this before and said, here's where we start.
Right.
Who do we need to bring together? And then let's get very clear about what we're going to do and all the things we have to have put into place to help people be successful.
And the result?
Well, the result is a ballot measure passed. So it's
Right.
actually kind of enshrined in our Colorado Constitution,
Yeah.
and doesn't mean we're done. But it was a really big milestone that took 3 years. I mean, it was a long time. So.
That's amazing. Well, Debbie, thank you so much for your time today. I think, besides everyone who's listening that's going to be inspired, I actually have so many things coming out of this that I, literally tomorrow are going to put into action. So thank you for that. And thank you for all the work that you do in the community. It's so important to have women like you that we can look up to and that we can trust and believe that you care. And so thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Jane. It's so wonderful to spend time with you too.
My conversation with Debbie struck such a personal note for me as we dug deeper into how she keeps going as a leader in times that are hard. I loved her concept of setting milestones that are achievable and then recognizing the wins along the way. Often, I know I try too hard to solve a big problem that seems so daunting and so unachievable. And from that can come the feeling of failure. I also loved her discussion about creating art, inspired by her mother, and how we can look at the same picture and see something very different. I have 2 questions for myself and for you. The first one, how do we set achievable milestones, whether at life or at work, with permission to get there one step at a time, not achieving the grand result all at once? And second, how do we acknowledge that our view of the world, or our view of a piece of art, can be totally different than someone else's, and try to better understand their view? Special thanks to Jane's Place fabulous producer, Aditi Joshi, who made my passion a reality. I am also so appreciative that the amazing musician, Tim Cook, provided the lively music from the Subdudes called Them Figs. This podcast was brought to you by Rudy's Bakery new gluten-free Sandos with Justin's Nut Butter and from our friends at Naturally Colorado. I want to keep asking questions that matter, and I want this to feel like a space where your story belongs too. If there's something you want to talk about, a moment, a memory, a shift you're going through, Jane's Place door is always open. Truly. You can drop me a note on the website, join a future episode, or simply listen in when you're ready. Because Jane's Place isn't just a podcast, it's a gathering, and I'm so grateful that you're here.